afternoon and welcome to this session on leadership in business. My name is Íñigo Arriaga. I'm going to be moderating this roundtable on critical thinking, leadership, interaction, learning communities, participation and interaction. These are all skills and abilities that are essential in any organization, also for improving our political system, and in summary, for the benefit of society. We will deal with other current concepts in organizations like calm leadership, leadership decision-making and its measuring and assessment, and also learning communities. We are very lucky to have with us two luxury experts who are Carmen Bigger, Dr. Faccione, Peter Faccione, and Íñigo Marquina. They are well known. Anyway, you have some information about them, about their work on the dossier of the Congress. Also, Dr. Faccione has taken part in two previous sessions, so some of you have already listened to what he had to say. And also, my suggestion is to start with the interventions. The first intervention will be by Carmen Bigger in Spanish, then Dr. Faccione in English, and finally Íñigo Marquina in Spanish. After these three interventions, we have a Q&A session of about 1 hour. So I give you the floor, Carmen. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm well aware that at this time there is a great competitiveness between different halls. There are very good presenters in the other rooms, but I have to congratulate you because you have chosen the best one, the best room. The important one is this one here. I'm just joking. Humor is very important in the afternoon especially. I wanted to tell you that when Antonio López, COAS, we were discussing how could cooperate with this event. And he invited me to take part in this session. And at first I thought I had no time for coming here. I thought, too busy. There are very high-level presenters here. And in summary, I said, I've been working with CEOs and executives for over 20 years, but I'm no expert in leadership. And also I don't like flying. And then I wasn't feeling too well the day before. When I was in the airport, I was thinking I should go back home. And then I found two very good reasons for being here with you now. First one is that taking part in an event like this one, on education, which is the great party for education this year. And I say this because I'm used to organizing educational events in my organization. So for those of us who work in education and we know it's a drive for change for society, it is very important to support it professionally, but also to take part in these kind of events. And the second reason is that Antonio told me, listen, Carmen, I'm not sure if I have enough women as presenters. And as you can understand, I'm sensitive to these kind of arguments. And you can understand that with someone that's committed with education and sensitive with women, I couldn't say no. So I have changed my agenda, I have overcome my shyness, and I'm suffering the weather here. And I just want to thank Antonio for inviting me to be here this afternoon, and also because I'm learning a lot. As most of you might know, Bilbao is a capital for cooking, capital city for cooking, and cooking is in fashion now on Spanish TV. So I'm going to deconstruct my presentation. I'll start with the presentation on the dish, and that will be the title. The title is Calm Leadership. What was I thinking of when I chose this title? I was thinking in the form and diverse forms, in talent and also attitude, and in two groups of population. One is the toxic leaders, aggressive ones, that they like to discredit peers, that have a stress problem, and they scream a lot. This is coming into fashion. We have to think of these jury members on TV shows that use fear. They are against critical thinking or independent thinking. They don't want to hear other voices, other views, and this way they reduce the motivation of the team. These I, me, and mine leaders that work just for themselves, we all know some of them, or we have known some of them in our work experience. I was also thinking on the role of many women that are getting to very high management positions. They take a masculine role similar to the one I've just described, or they can choose their more feminine, female side. So I'm for the normalization of women in these roles of leadership. We have to be the way we are, because I'm convinced there's another way to do things, not like a toxic leader. And when we talk about calm leadership, people that do this from calmness, from calm, are not very well valued from the outside, but they achieve the same things. They get the same accomplishments as the other ones. Maybe it takes a little bit longer for them, but they get where they want to get. This is my experience, and I think you get there through a path that's more beautiful than the other ones, and generating a more group leadership that allows us to integrate several skills like creativity or innovation, because if there's fear, there's no way these two skills are going to be developed. We can also develop dialogue to build projects and build teams. Gandhi said that if you act in a different way compared to the streamline, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, and then they attack you, then you know you have won. And just following with this culinary format, I think we are in a new world, in a very new world. I have taken some notes in the presentations I have attended, like volatile, complex, ambiguous, strange, and competitive. These are characteristics that explain why leaders are stressed. But when it comes to mixing and shaking, I say we are in a social context that's marked by immediateness and impulsiveness. And I have three thoughts about this. I don't hear anymore the debate if a leader is born or it becomes a leader. I think there's an excess of this entrepreneurial culture. It seems we need to have leader DNA to be leaders. And I want to tell you that after 22 years sharing work with high management, I had never heard so often the word leader as I've heard it here during these 3 days. I think maybe we are putting this term much, or this concept much, into fashion. Also, we've got new technologies. That means that we have increased our visibility, our exposure. So we are leaders 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on a global level. And I think this is a change from a leadership that could have been flexible. We used to be family leaders, project leaders, or the leader of the friends, of our friends. But now we are constant leaders. And last, I want to talk about metrics. We are in a moment where everything is measured, but we are measuring in a quantitative way. There are leaders that have many followers on the social networks, so maybe we are forgetting quality. And this is why I think we are creating a new concept of leader with 4 characteristics. It's mandatory. We have to be leaders at all times, in all places, and for every audience. And in order to tackle this new concept of leader, we need good raw materials. As cooks say, a good recipe starts in the market. I don't believe so much in leaders. I believe in self-leadership, in this raw material that we used to build ourselves. And I think this is a very suitable forum for thinking why we want to be leaders, for whom we want to be leaders. Not everything goes. We need to be clear about the ways of being and the ways of doing, and incorporating the values in which we believe, our experiences, the way we see life. This way we'll be able to get this calm and serenity that will help us to have an impact and to be admired by others. This internal calm, which is opposite to the trending topic leaders, with a soccer example, we could compare Mourinho, who sticks his finger in the other team's coach, and he got many followers, but then we've got Del Bosque, the Spanish national coach, who's very calm and is a very good leader, a calm leader. So I think it is the right time for us as a society to acknowledge that this other way of leading is as good as the first one, as Mourinho's. I think this type of leader believes in the team, allows the team to grow and to develop. And in summary, if we want to know how we want to do things, this has nothing to do with our sex, if we are men or women, just identifying these references, especially among young people who are under pressure to find a job. They are competing much more than us. So we have to be alert to set a positive example for them, because experts say that the 2 first years in the labor market, this is when you assume these working models. So I believe that to be an inspiration source based on calm and becoming self-leaders is our responsibility to generate leaders that will have an impact on our environment, and this way build a better world. And then I'll finish with another quote by Gandhi. So, look at your thoughts, or be careful with your thoughts, because they will become your words. Be careful with your acts because they will become habits, and be careful with your habits because they will become your destiny. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Carmen. Y ahora es el turno de el doctor Faccione.
Thanks, Carmen. I give the floor to Dr. Faccione.
You must forgive me. I do not speak Spanish. Mi español es muy mal. Cuando habla en español, tengo muchos problemas. So I will have to speak in English. And I would like to share with you some ideas that came from some earlier talks that I gave here in this room about leadership. And I'm going to succeed. Okay. Okay, boom. My colleagues on the panel, I must apologize to you for the slides being behind your back. I know that for the people there, especially the people who don't speak English, it's so much easier to see the words than it is to understand what I'm saying. And so I apologize to my colleagues. And thank you, Carmen, for your wonderful ideas. I so much agree with you about how there are many styles that can be successful leaders, and how important it is that no part of our leadership is toxic to our colleagues, because that only hurts our organization. I completely agree with you about that. I have some concerns, and they come from a somewhat different place than my colleagues. I've been a consultant for many, many, many years, and I've also held senior leadership positions. And I work with organizations where leadership is a very important characteristic, for example, the military, as well as with business and education. And I want to begin by first saying that there are many leaders in any group, and you do not have to be the person at the very top of an organization to be the leader. There are leaders within groups as much as there are leaders who are in charge of groups. And often leadership is something that can emerge in a team from team members, as well as from the person who is asked to be in charge. And what always surprises me about businesses in particular, and education as well, is that we do not look for the evidence that we think is most relevant when we hire someone. When we hire someone into our organization, especially hiring someone into the organization at any level who we hope will be a leader among their peers and maybe at some point a leader in the organization with a title. I also notice that when we interview people, we don't gather any demonstration of key elements. And I'm talking now about skills and habits of mind and temperament, as Carmen was talking about, that will affect their success, leading with their peers or eventually leading from the top of their group. And finally, most of our training programs fail to cultivate these critical thinking skills and key attributes, mindset attributes, that will make people most successful among their peers. And why is this, I wondered? Because we always measure all kinds of things, and I sometimes think that we don't measure what matters. As Carmen suggested, we measure how many friends we have on Facebook. That's lovely, but that doesn't make you a better leader at all, one way or the other. That doesn't make you a worse leader either. Everyone knows that there are knowledge and attributes and skills that come into play. What we are looking for whenever we hire or train our people is the person or groups of people who can combine the attributes and the skills and the knowledge. So imagine that you are going to think about whether you should bring someone for an interview, and you have a number of candidates, and all the candidates tell you that they have solid education credentials and many years of experience and prior professional successes. Terrific. So happy. No one puts on their resume they have many years of failure. Everybody puts about their successes. And all of the candidates have wonderful letters of support from their friends, and none of them have known criminal records, which we do check, and no current legal issues or lawsuits. And so we think, which of these should we interview or develop as internal leaders? And every one of the candidates knows how to be a good interviewer. We practice that, don't we? We know what questions they're going to ask. We practice our answers. Everyone claims that they have the attributes, and everyone claims they have the skills. They claim it, and this is my problem. I don't see that they show us the evidence, or we don't ask for the evidence. Now, many lists exist of leadership attributes. You'll hear some today from my colleagues. I've worked with some executives and a research team. We've developed a list. You'll hear a lot of overlap in these lists, and that's what's exciting. There's a lot of congruity in these lists. The list that I particularly am interested in is a list that includes these characteristics, and Gandhi and Jesus are the only two people that have them. So the rest of us only have some of these, maybe. But we try. We try to cultivate them. We try to cultivate foresight, to look ahead. What are the problems? What are the consequences? We try to cultivate being honorable and truthful and having integrity in our dealings with one another. We are trying to cultivate this desire to succeed and be driven for the good of our company, the good of our organization. We strive to learn ways to motivate our peers and our colleagues so that we as a team can be successful. We all want to be innovative and creative and find answers to problems, because that's what we do as leaders and as professionals. We wrestle with problems. And if we already had the answers, well, then we wouldn't have the problem. We must learn, if we don't already have this characteristic, we must learn to be tolerant of diversity in the workplace and to accept people who approach problems in different ways than we do and with different styles than we have, as Carmen was saying. And we must learn to be professional in our interactions with one another, always being professional, no matter where we are in the organization. And of course, mindful and judicious and mature in our judgments. So we found a way to evaluate these things, our research team, and we use fairly standard psychological metrics that involve presenting people with a list of statements, statements which express attitudes, which express beliefs, which express intentions, and we ask the people if they endorse or do not endorse these things about themselves. And people are wonderfully self-revealing on these kinds of instruments. But we also have in the instruments a check just in case they are trying to deceive us, which happens. And so we want to show you one candidate who was claiming to have all 10 of those characteristics, and it wasn't Jesus and it wasn't Gandhi, so we were skeptical. We were skeptical about this. So this was the list again, and the instrument we used, which takes about 30 minutes at most, enables us to score their responses in 3 categories, 3 qualitative categories: strongly positive, positive, or we just don't have any evidence yet, so not manifested. This candidate was not very strong. This candidate was, as a matter of fact, only positive or strongly positive on 5 of the characteristics and did not show anything helpful on the other 5. And if it were me doing the interviewing or hiring, I would probably exclude this candidate. I'd be very concerned. Maybe they have lots of years of experience. Maybe they've been to a great university. Maybe they were at an organization that was a success. But when I would bring them to my organization, and if they did not act in an honorable way, and if they were not thoughtful and professional and mature in their judgment, I don't think I'd want them in our group. because it would harm the culture and the success of our company. So again, our friend tells us they have all those traits, and we now want to test, do they have the skills? And skills are different than attributes. Attributes are part of your personality. Skills are things that we can develop by practice. And so they say, yes, I have all the skills. I have great communication skills. I'm a wonderful thinker. I am fabulously skilled. And then we say, okay, yes, I'm sure that's true, but would you mind if we tested you? And some candidates do mind and they go away, which is fine with us. But if they are okay with being tested, we have a little test that takes no more than an hour. And in this test, we present them with scenarios that are common to the level of the organization where they'll be working, professional or executive or staff. Common scenarios, things we all could reason through with our reasoning skills that we developed in college and in school. We give the names of the skills suitably business-sounding names. Reasoning skills dealing with critical elements of problems, or evaluating options, or seeing the consequences of possible options, or dealing with risk and uncertainty, or making quantitative analyses that make sense. And we, again, test people with this. And here's a candidate who did very, very well. This candidate was strong or superior on all those skills. So obviously this would be a candidate I'd be very interested in interviewing. Now, skills are one thing, attributes are another thing, and of course we want both. We want both. So my question is, why cannot we also add a measure of the attributes and the skills to deal with some of the problems that I first expressed? And that, in fact, is one of my recommendations. If we are going to achieve our strategic advantage and hire smart people, I would recommend that we add measures of skills and mindset characteristics to our applicants and to our interviews. Now, with an interview, you can't give a test. That doesn't quite work. But with an interview, you can do something that is even more revealing. You can use case studies. You can use scenarios. You can have the interview team, the people who are going to meet the candidates, ask them questions that relate to current issues in the organization as if it were a practice case study to see how the person responds, which is a very different thing than asking the typical interview questions that we all know about in most interviews. And finally, in our organizations, we could also use case studies and scenarios in our training programs and develop the very skills and the very attributes that we prize to make our teams more successful. So if we measure what matters, then we can find a way to train it, then we can find a way to observe it, and then we can be more successful as an organization. I apologize for not giving more information about this, but there was a talk earlier today, which I think you can find the audio tape for, which will have much richer examples of the things that I've been talking about. Thank you very much for your time, and I will now give the floor back to our leader.
Yo estoy pensando, Aritz está por ahí. Yo, Palau, te voy a hablar desde aquí, desde estos. ¿Sí? Entonces me voy a quitar esto. Bueno, os habéis portado fenomenal con el tiempo. Voy a ver si yo...
You've been great with timing. I hope I can also keep on time.
Muchas gracias a todos por venir.
Thank you very much to all of you for coming.
Y bueno, esperemos que el rato os merezca la pena. Que os podáis llevar algo. Que alguien se pueda llevar algo.
I hope you can learn from this session and you can all get something from today's panel. I see lots of familiar faces. I feel I'm playing at home. And I was quite calm about this. Panel is always easier, well, in good company, but once you see the people attending the panel, you say, hey, maybe I should be a bit more nervous about it. Well, I'm going to talk about two things. Carmen started talking about leadership and approach to leadership, styles. Peter Faccioni spoke how to measure some of those abilities or capacities, attitudes. And I'd like to talk not about the process itself. You know that consultants, we tend to talk about our own book, our own ideas. But no, that's not what I want to do. If you do this, you will develop this leadership capacity, and if you don't do it, you won't do it. You won't get what you want. No, that's not my idea. What I want is to present you some communities that are the ones I know, see what are the ingredients in them, and see if they can work. And to talk about three capacities as a request from Idoia that it might be interesting to the rest of you. I didn't want to do that. Can I just close it? What happens? Oh. Well, don't pay attention to the screen. Okay, Edith will solve the problem. Learning communities. In Basque knew that EGAN Air cluster was promoting learning communities in which directors are aligned themselves to grow together. This creates an interest. They did some research. They thought it was, well, relevant enough as if to bring it here. That's why I'm here. I'd like to thank José Juez from EGAN, that he looks like a very gentle man, but he's a really daring person that has pushed forward development and transformation processes that are not conventional most of the cases. So José, and I would also like to mention Gonzalo Regas too, that he's not here, but he's also a colleague. There's many types of learning communities, and I'll talk to you about mine. It doesn't mean that you have to work as we do it. The focus is leadership and people management. 8 to 15 managers. They can be open from different organizations or from the same. They reach an agreement, and during the year they have some meetings. First 1 day and a half meeting, and every 6 to 8 weeks they meet again. It's a mix between space for sharing and development project. There's some organized moments in the day and some just open meetings. They work. Our feeling is that it works. And this is very valuable because it's clear the importance of the relevance of leadership, but the feeling is that it's not easy. We find it difficult to find something to grow in this leadership program. But if we find something that helps us to work, to grow, we have to pay attention to it. Our feeling is that it works because of what they tell us and for what other people tell us about their development. We have a feedback. There's something in the process that takes them to a more productive leadership. Why does it work? Well, my most honest question is that I don't know. I'm not very sure why it works. I don't think, and I don't mean that it happens by chance. I think it's deliberate, but we do it on purpose. We do what we do, but then not everything works as we expect it. And we have to think, why did it work? There's a few keys that we should take into account. First, these communities connect to learning by doing philosophy. We try to promote discovery, something that will change the way we see things. And from that point, participants can take it to what they see, take it to their day-to-day work, and see themselves with a different vision. We also try to make them try different behaviors, different ways of doing, and they can take it back to their reality and do it. Or train something that they know it works. It's a matter of nurturing a desire to try and then go back to space where they can share their discoveries, their progresses, their difficulties. In that way, it's not a one-way, it's a return trip. We find the way of making it more intense. But I do think that this is a very valuable element. Second point, I think it's much more important. It's most important, actually. And it's in the second place for logistic reasons. The journey we were talking about, this trip, the community that participate in it, it's a journey. It's a personal trip that they take. When the process starts, I normally tell them, I give them a Moleskine notebook, the one similar to the one we have had. It's a book for 19th century travelers. Those were the British travelers were the ones who had time and money to travel. And we tell them, this is the documentation you're going to have for this process. It's not what is important, it's not what I tell you, it's what you discover. It's an inner trip to try to discover our handbook. Each of us has one. We know some chapters very well, but there's some other chapters that we've never read, we haven't dared to read. It's a process, this is our process, it's a way of trying to understand our handbook. Through this trip, we offer the rest of our colleagues this handbook and we work on it. We're not talking about things, we're talking about ourselves, and we connect this way ourselves to the process because we're all very keen on knowing about ourselves. It's what interests us most. The other reason why I think this works well is because when we feel that we need change, we want to change, we need it. The best tool, the most powerful tool is within us. We don't need to look any further. This is a very efficient ingredient and I think is the most important. And the third element is necessary for the third one to happen. We need to create a safe space. If we were a community, I wouldn't start to talk about all this to you. I would spend some hours trying to stretch opening muscles, that opening that creates trust among your colleagues. When we know that what we are seeing is reality, that produces trust. So it's very important that we open ourselves. We would spend some time trying to understand other people's capacities, shared experiences, a bit about that handbook, something that connects us. That connects us until we feel that that space, that is not a physical space, it's safe enough for me to place my vulnerability there, offer it to the rest. And when we're capable of creating a safe space, lots of things happen. And when we can't create that space, very few things happen, or they're very superficial. These are some ingredients, some brief ideas, the ones I see. You might see some others, but I think that learn by doing trip, that development space, that personal trip, that handbook, and that set of safe spaces are the necessary and valuable elements and ingredients that we need. These are my ingredients. You might need to think your own. But when we're going to choose our processes, when we are in a position in the organization where we want to propose or suggest and present some development processes, or when we want to design a process, we need to think about those elements and the ingredients, and let's get away from the traditional things that we know that work.
Sometimes the worst risk is not taking any risk at all.
There's a Spanish joke where there's a person, a drunkard, where he tries to find the keys where he can see because there's light, even though he knows it's in a darker space. We need to find different resources within us, and it might be in the dark side. That's the first task. On Idoia's suggestion, I also wanted to mention 3 capacities that I think are important. I'm not sure these are the most important. If I had to choose one capacity, I would choose self-emotion management. But there's others that I'm not going to mention. I'm not going to mention listening. Peter Drucker said there's managers that believe are good because they speak well. But really, the good managers are the ones that listen well. And we're not going to talk about listening. We're not going to talk about generating shared feeling. There's a book from Vicente Lenard that says that leaders have to share sense. We need a sense, and leaders have to create this sense. If we don't find a sense in things, we have our handbrake on. I'm not going to talk about curiosity, and I think this is an essential capacity. We need to connect. We need curiosity to connect. If you go to a demonstration, and if you go ahead of the demonstration with a loudspeaker, you're the leader of that demonstration. But if you're 500 meters ahead of it, you're a crazy man in the street. Leaders need to be connected also personally. But I want to talk to you about 3. One that I've already mentioned, one that I think we don't pay enough attention to, and one that I think is not well understood. The unknown capacity is connected to the building of safe spaces. It's connected to promoting openness, and what do I do with that openness? How do I promote my team to talk about what we have to talk, how they can tell us how they feel? We need to talk about this. A client told me, a manager said, our colleagues don't talk. It's only me, the one who talks. Nobody in my team talks. I was curious, and so he was invited. He invited me to a session with his panel, and he presented me for 3/4 of an hour. Come on, I'm not that interesting. And when he's finished, he said, speak. And they said, you see, nobody says a thing. Well, we need to develop the art of promoting openness. And then what do we do with this openness? I think it was last week. My younger son, 15-year-old kid, came home at the agreed time, perfect condition. I asked him, what did you do? And he started telling me. Oh, he told me things that I think he shouldn't have told me. I'm not sure who was here in Mar Nomena when she said volunteer. When something happened to him, he went on the increase, and when it reached a certain level, he hit someone. I was not going to punish him, to hit him, but yes, probably to punish. And sometimes it came to a point that I said, Inigo, breathe, please breathe. And my son kept telling me things, but he was really unaware that he was telling me things he shouldn't be telling me. I breathed, and I breathed, and I then thought, okay, I have to be thankful. He's told me. I had this Gollum moment in which you're thinking, shall I be thankful? Shall I be angry? I was trying to connect. And my son kept there risking his future and telling me all the things he shouldn't have done and shouldn't have told me. At the end, I told him, Javi, thank you for telling me. I don't think it was appropriate. He told me his version, I told him my point of view, but at least we could talk. If I had gone on the other side, I would end up, if I don't let my son tell me the possibility, and because I get angry, what my son would end up doing, well, I just hang around with my friends. I won't know what my son has been doing. And this can be applied to teams, to your people. There's things we don't know, they don't tell us. There's a problem when they're just about, we know about the problems when they're just about to explode, when we don't know the difficulties that we have around. What aren't we doing? What are we doing? How are we promoting openness? What are we doing with that openness when it happens? Energy is one of the elements that we don't pay attention to. We all have things that give us energy and take energy from us. We're all from the same species, so I'm sure this happens to all of you. And many of these things have to do with behaviors of others. Some behaviors of other people give us energy, and some others take it from us. I've got terrible news, great news, sorry. You and I also give and take energy from others, and we do it constantly. Not in 2013, not today. I do things that give and take energy. A smile, a gesture in a meeting, in a conversation, here. And it's great to understand the way we give and take this energy. It's not that we do very strange things. Each of us does one or other thing. And being aware of the way we give or take energy is very important, and organizations do the same. And it's also something we need to reflect on. How does my organization give or take energy? I think managing has a lot to do with giving energy. And we need to be aware of this. We don't pay attention to the capacity of giving energy. So this was one I wanted to highlight. And the third element is acknowledgement, that is never well understood. We talk about acknowledgement very often. And it's not something we do. It's a capacity, it's an ability. It's not a tap on your shoulder. We always say, oh, no, I don't tap my colleagues on the shoulder. No, it's not my style. It's not that. Acknowledging is that I know that the members of my team know who I am. And that I'm valid as I am for them. It's important that I know that I can be accepted by my colleagues, because that's the way I will be myself. That's the way humans are successful. There's context in which we can allow ourselves or not allow to be ourselves. We feel it. And this feeling is transferred. We don't interpret it very well, but there's a great transmission of this feeling. Acknowledgement is very important in the life of a team, because a team is not a group of people with one shared boss. It has a special connection, and their objective is to build things together. And we cannot build things together if we have small talks with our colleagues. I only share development of others if I trust them. These were the three things I wanted to talk about. I hope you've learned something from this, and probably you can just look at the mirror. These are clues for looking at yourself. Take one. Don't take the three of them. Just one. Go one by one. Not now. We could do like as Jeff in the morning. Do it now? No, well, I'm telling you to take one at least. And look, can I do something? Can I learn the way I give or take energy? Can I see how I promote openness, safe spaces? There's someone who's too far and I can't see the good side of them. Can I change the way I look at this person? And I didn't really know how to finish this talk. It's a very well-known tale, but it's a great tale. Many of us have had to live with our lack of capacities, and very often we think we can't. Maybe we think we can. It's the elephant, the chained elephant. You will listen, you can hear to Jorge Bucay listening. Look at the mirror, and if you've learned something, for me, it's good enough. Thank you very much.
Bueno, muchas gracias a los tres por vuestras.
Thank you very much to the three of you for your presentations and the ideas that you've left here for us. We still have 10 minutes for questions and answers. But before we do so, please, if you want to make a question, ask for the microphone and tell us who you want to pose the question to. Let's see who goes first.
Hola, ahora sí. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I would like to make the three of you the same question. You can, the three of you, answer, or one of them, and one specifically for Íñigo. These learning communities, can you tell us where it's done? Is this an international phenomenon? Is it done especially here? I'd like to know the reach of this practice that looks really interesting. And the general question is, for all of you, is we've seen a sweet version of the daily routine of most workers, a very good vision of leader as a good person. And the question that I had forgotten, sorry. I know that questions should be brief. Sorry about that. Do you think that the leader is less competitive? It seems that lack of competitiveness is against being a good leader. And the dimension of the communities, please. We haven't invented anything. Communities are as old as humanity. We have been evolving and learning together. If we get a bit closer in time, learning communities, especially in Anglo-Saxon literature, has been used for decades. It's mainly been thought as a space for sharing. And I think this is very well connected to development. But that's not our own idea. In therapy, learning communities have been used for decades. There's supervision that in therapy is very recommended. Actually, it's compulsory. It's a learning community. There's a facilitator and a sharing and developing area and space. In my company, we come from the business world. We've tried to learn to be human. That's what we needed. We've gone to those worlds to find some clues. And what we've found is a very valuable process. I can't tell you that there's more. I can tell you that in our process, we've brought to the company something that we've already seen in other worlds. We think it works. We try to understand how it works. These are the ingredients that make it work. I didn't want to give an impression of a sweet leader. I wanted to actually promote it. I think we are in a moment where there's lots of tension, and I think because of these tensions that we've mentioned, these factors that we have in our new environment, we need more than ever, rather than this ideal image, that calmness, that I think that competitiveness and stress are making us aggressive. And I think that this leadership is not opposed to assertivity, to care, to finding common work, common spaces. And I think you can facilitate much more from a calm space, a common shared space, than from the other side. Of course, in all companies, there's mature leaders and managers, and they are working very much on the human side of leaders and managers. But I think we are in the right time to reflect about the tension and the competitiveness that we've seen. They need to be channeled to a more calm space. And I think we will be much more efficient and take much better decisions. If you know what you want and you can do it in a calm way, we will do it better.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate what you said. I found your answers very helpful. Thank you for the terrific question. On learning communities, I want to reflect what I was thinking about as I listened to your excellent presentation. It reminded me of experiences that were like religious retreats, where you were guided for a couple of days with a group of people to become introspective and reflective and to write your own personal manual to understand yourself better. And I thought that's a wonderful image. And I have been on many leadership retreats in businesses where we go off-site and create a sense of community. Of course, we don't usually have a spiritual leader. We have, a business leader working as the guide for our retreat. But much of what happens that is successful in those kinds of off-site experiences that usually last for a day or two are the kinds of personal development that you were speaking so eloquently about. Now, with regards to competitiveness, I take a really different view. I think competitiveness in a leader is absolutely essential. But it's the direction that the competitiveness is focused upon that makes the difference. The leader, the group, to be useful to its organization must compete against other organizations. My business competes against every other business that's trying to offer the same products or the same services that I'm offering with my business. And as a leader of that group, I want to have the best business that can compete in that market environment. The best grocery store, or the best dry cleaners, or the best university, or the best military. You do not want to come in second if you're in the military. The leader must guide the organization to compete, and if it means that the leader has to have competitive impulses, all the better. The wrong competition is when it's focused inside, when people within the organizations compete against each other. That destroys an organization, that destroys a team. So the successful team, the successful leader will encourage and focus the competitive spirit against the genuine competitors, which are the other organizations in the market environment.
Si me permitís una pincelada en la misma línea, ¿no?
In the same line of what we've heard, I think the contrary of being aggressive is not being soft. It's firm. You really need to have a strong temper to manage your own emotions, to help others grow, and to be strong. And I think that the leadership model that we are proposing is stronger and more brave people. Those people that dare to look at themselves in the mirror.
¿Alguna pregunta más?
Are there any other questions?
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I'm Patricia. I want to ask a question to Peter. When you said that interviews to candidates that tell us their stories and the success, and they're going to tell us our success and failures. You've mentioned the way of measuring. Maybe now it's a good moment if you've had any failure. Could you tell us what type of failures you've seen? That could give us an image of the candidate.
I could give you a long list of my personal failures.
Sorry, no, I don't.
I have. I'm uncertain about your question. I think every manager has had failures. If they have tried to be successful at all, they will not have succeeded in everything in every way. It's often useful to ask a person in an interview, tell us something that truly disappointed you. Tell us a time when you were not able to bring the organization to the level that you were hoping the organization would achieve. And most of us who go on interviews actually expect that question and have a prepared answer for it. So I'm not sure if it's an effective question. But I think it's a good place to go. So I would turn the question a little bit, and I would say something more about the organization. So you assume you are interviewing to work in my business. I might tell you something about my business that is not going well. And I might say to you, please help me, because I'm very busy and I know I must interview you, and I would actually tell you, but before I ask you any interview questions, I'm consumed with a problem, and this is my problem. It's on my desk right now, and I'm not happy with how it's going. So before we start the interview, could you help me think about this problem where I'm afraid we are going to fail? And in your response to that, I will learn a lot about you. And it's authentic, because I really do have that problem, and it really is distracting me right now. And it's more valuable to ask you for help and see what you say than it is for me to go through the standard list of questions.
Entendido, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Understood.
Muchas gracias. Mi nombre es Cristian Camilo Zuluaga López. Vengo de la Universidad de Manizales.
Thank you. My name is Cristian. I come from the University of Manizales, and together with my colleagues, we are representatives of the students, representatives of our university in the board of the managing board of the university, and we are in charge of some leadership elements, and we have to answer towards 6,000 students. We are somehow their leaders. And my question is, we have a problem in Latin America, and probably in many European institutions happens the same. It's the need of lecturers to try to promote and motivate students not only to learn and reproduce content, but to create and to generate that creativity, that knowledge spirit. And in this process, one of the difficulties that I see is that in the institutions we hear about leadership, and we tell students, you have to be leaders, you have to promote leadership, you have to create the company, you have to be entrepreneurs. But when we go down to the root, what we see is that the people, the lecturers that are trying to share this knowledge are those lecturers that can only give their theory, but they haven't got a clue on experience. They've never had a company, they've never worked in a company. They don't know what is to innovate, to create. They just give the words. They find it in books, but they lack that component, that leader that when is facing someone who has a company, it seems that passion comes out of the body naturally and transmits. Students, this passion is contagious. Do you think that the real entrepreneurs should be going to universities, or do you think that normal lecturers or traditional lecturers are enough?
I would like to answer first. Because I'd like to answer first because I know nothing about this problem. I was a dean for 19 years, hired faculty. And you have identified a very big problem that's not limited to just Europe or just your experience. It is extraordinarily difficult to find high-quality faculty who have had the personal experience that goes along with their theory that they talk about. But you can find them. They are out there. Often they are people who are in the middle of their lives and who have had some successes and some challenges and want now to reinvent themselves. And if the dean, my old job, looks for these people and encourages them to apply to the university and excites them about how much fun it is to teach, because I always found it fun, then you will benefit more. So when we hired nursing faculty, we wanted to hire not just nursing faculty who had a doctorate in nursing, but nursing faculty who had actually practiced nursing in a hospital. Same for business, same for engineering, same for communications, same for theater, same for music, same for science. Every discipline, we always wanted to find the persons who actually did the things that they would talk about. The other thing that we found as deans, and there's more of this in the United States, so I'm mentioning it to you, and perhaps it's here too. We always found that the students learned best when we would give them projects that were authentic projects that really reflected what they were going to do on the job. Even though they might be beginners on the job, we could find projects that would be at that level and have them do them and have their teachers be their guides so that there was less talking and more student doing. And then the teacher helped the students evaluate the projects, not the teacher evaluate it, the teacher helped the students evaluate it, so you could internalize the working experience in your disciplinary area and the evaluation of your own work. Sometimes we would even have the students evaluate each other and see if you were a team of 4 people, each of you get to evaluate the other 3, so then you have the experience of a peer in a working environment being pleased with or not pleased with the team that they were working with, which happens a lot in the real world. So thank you for bringing that up, and you certainly just have heard from someone who again knows nothing about your personal experiences, but I'm just sharing what we've tried in the United States.
Bien, estamos ya fuera de tiempo, pero vamos a...
We're running out of time. We could have one more question. Very briefly, I think that university doesn't make, the way you explain it, it doesn't make much sense. I think the development process needs other ingredients. And of course, bringing different people can be very rewarding. But I also think it's a type of model. They're very close experiences. Team Academy, I don't know if you know it. You learn to leading projects. And probably next door, there's also some good answers on different models that are good keys. Any other question? I'd like to ask you about your opinion about leaders. There's usually a leader at the top, and then there's some intermediate leaders, team managers, more or less. What do you think about leaders that make intermediate leaders compete between themselves? Leaders that make their own team members compete? For anyone in particular? Sorry, we can't hear the speaker. The microphone is off and we couldn't hear her.
The microphone was off because I don't have a good answer. No, It sounds like a foolish thing to do. I always believe that in any endeavor we get exactly what we measure, and if what you are talking about is a senior leader who is trying to measure and make competition and measure one person against the other, I'm not sure what the goal is. I know where they do those sorts of things. For example, I once played in a band, a musical instrument, and they would have us compete to move up the chairs, to become the first chair of our section. But that's because the person who was in the first chair had the hardest music to play, and so they wanted the best musician there. And I know that in sports, when we have many players who play the same position, like midfielder, we make them compete because we can only have one midfielder on the match at one time for our team. But in a business, it's not like that. So I don't understand why a senior leader would do that. Now, I agree, and I'm sure Carmen's going to tell us that she does too, that there are senior leaders who do that. So I think you have discovered a problem, and I don't have a good reason why that person would do that.
Bueno, yo simplemente quería apuntar que creo que el liderazgo al final.
I can only remark that leadership is not so much connected to a position in the chart. You don't necessarily, you're not a leader just because you're the top manager. You can be a leader in a student movement, or you can be a leader in your family, or a leader within your friends. Unfortunately, this model exists, and I've lived it. I've suffered it. It's a bit like an Italian mafia model. But we cannot forget that we are competing when we're living in cities, in big cities. We compete almost for anything and everything. It's a constant stress that we suffer. And that's something we should also review, because what is worth competing for and what isn't? I'll break with what I said before. I'd like to make one more question. I wouldn't get... Oh, there's another question before that.
Gracias. Yo quiero preguntar a la única mujer que está ahí
I'd like to ask the only woman in the panel,
que quiere decir que todavía el liderazgo es
and
muy
who
masculino.
might say, this might make us think that leadership is much more masculine than feminine. Decision-making spheres are mainly masculine. And I'd like to, well, she said that leadership in women shouldn't be copying the leadership of men. My question would be, there aren't many references of feminine, of female leadership. Do you think that there could be different characteristics in women as leaders? Which do you think is that stamp, that seal, that essence of female leadership in these leading positions? Or do we actually fail, and that's why we lack those qualities to have a more relevant role and a bigger presence in these decision-making spheres? Forgetting, of course, the female condition of being mothers, leaving this aside, going into competences. Well, women, I can say that we are 50% of talent, and it's a real pity that in organizations that lose this complementarity, this 50%. But the way we think, the way we act, and the things that interest us are not the same as those of men. Businesses, schools, and the models and references that we have led us to think and have taken many women to take this way of doing, these ways of working. I can see very powerful women, very relevant positions that are as aggressive or more than men. They need to justify up to a certain extent the fact that they're in this position. And I can tell you an anecdote. I don't really like traveling by plane, a person that knows very well the world of pilots, she's a commander, said, oh, you fly probably much safer because she's probably had to work much harder to be in that position. Yes, it is harder for us to get to that point, to the same place. We are half of the talent. We need to be natural. We need to be as we are. We need to flow. Let us flow the way we do, with our peculiarities, with our characteristics. No, don't try to imitate. Try to be ourselves. Try to be real. I think that all of us who are in consultancy, we realize and we feel very much when there's not a woman in a team. You have a capacity of seeing further for what's obvious. It's true that teams that are only formed by women have their own disadvantages. Okay, I won't make the question I wanted to ask. I'm sure many of you still have questions in your minds, but we're really out of time. I'm sure you'll stay here for a bit longer, so if you have any question, please do come forward and ask them straight away. We need to finish the session here. We're really out of time. Thank you once again for your presentation to the three speakers in the panel, Dr. Faccione, Carmen, Inigo. Thank you all here for coming to listen to them. Thank you very much. Good afternoon and enjoy the evening.